So stretch and squash is generally something that's thought of as something that happens only in cartoons or something that only happens in stylized animation. But stretch and squash happens in all of our motions. Like if I'm moving my hands like this, when my hand moves because of overlap, my hand goes into like a shape like this and then opens up here again. And that's also stretch and squash. And with that comes all of the issues that comes from like a cartoony stretch and squash. The one on the left here is like a rough idea of like what a stretch and squash looks like. When the object is speeding up, you can see that it's taking the form and kind of starting to point at the direction that it will be going. So that makes it more like a stretch line pointing upwards, and then when it's coming down, it's doing the same thing by pointing downwards. So the things to look out for that when you're watching animation, things that should like make you cringe, for example, when you're watching an animation, one of it is the losing of form. You can see in this middle one here, this is like down to such an extreme that this object no longer feels like a box. It's primarily more like a rectangle throughout the whole animation. If you look at all the frames, it's keeping more of a rectangle shape than a cube shape. So if this was like a character, for example, which we based on cubical shapes, and you use this in a way that it keeps losing form and it keeps in this elongated form, it would be basically a different character design. This happens a lot around like mouth shapes in realistic animation, for example. Like when we were animating Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy, he has the ability, the rig has the ability to take his lip and like stretch it all the way up here. Sometimes it looks actually very cool because like, you're doing like a nice stretch and squash when he's saying something like yeah or something like that. You can really blow this part out and really like stretch this part out. But at some point it starts to not preserve the actual flesh that's there, and it starts to become something that's like a gum. So that's something to look out for. And the most important thing, and I think this is like the more common